Hello and welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I got sent this on Twitter. This is fascinating. So Gary J. Tunnifcliffe, if you didn't know, was the writer and director of Hellraiser Judgment. Love it or hate it, it's a film. And he recently detailed Hellraiser Judgment sequel that would have actually introduced a new Hell Priest. Now, if you didn't know, I've had Gary on the channel a few times, and we do stay in contact, so I'm probably going to reach out to him and see if he wants to jump back on the channel to do a bit of a podcast sort of discussion, I guess, because I know a lot of you guys enjoyed having him on the channel as well. So if you're watching this, Gary, shoot me an email, bro. But this is interesting. This is over on Bloody Disgusting, so I'll drop it down below in the description box, but you can check it out. For those that are going to be confused by this, this is nothing pertaining to the new series or the new movie that's going to be in the works. This was kind of the end of that series, basically. Gary, I guess, is now the last director of those Hellraiser movies, because this is now a brand new thing that we're going to be getting. So anyway, in terms of, they actually do a really good job here of recapping where Hellraiser Judgment left off, and then they go into an interview with Gary to detail what the future or what his sequel would have been. So we'll cover this. Essentially, Paul T. Taylor, who played Pinhead, the new Pinhead, did a reasonable job, actually. I quite liked him as Pinhead. Thought he was no Doug Bradley, but he's really, really good. He was left shunned as a man, essentially. That's it. And then we still had Gary Tunnifcliffe's character of the Auditor in Germany, preying upon people, presumably. That's where we left off, right? There's not much else going on there. That was it. And then it was, I guess, setting the stage, from what I can tell anyway, setting the stage almost for a semi-war between hell and heaven, because there was an angel. And a lot of people rag on Hellraiser Judgment for introducing angels. The Christian, or well, the literal version of hell was introduced by Clive Barker a long time ago, actually. So Gary Tunnifcliffe didn't do anything which kind of breaks the law, despite people ragging on it for that. But let's dive into it, okay? So here's some sort of some concept topics by Gary. Anyway, he said that there was no development at all. There was none. You have to remember what happened was, when I made Judgment, I got a call from Bob Weinstein, which is really, really surprising. Bob called me personally to thank me and say what a great movie it was. He loved it. He was talking about showing it to Quentin Tarantino and stuff like this, and I was like, oh my god, this is finally going to happen for me. You know what I mean? I was like, finally, after all these years, I might get a crack at it, he said to Bob. Maybe you should have given me a chance years ago. Because he did actually pitch previous things called like Holy War and things like that long time ago. But anyway, Bob said to him, yeah, well, let's see how this does. And the film was finished, and I talked to Matt Stein over at Dimension, and he said, obviously, yeah, if this does well, we'll definitely be talking about a sequel. So I mulled over some ideas, but then we had the entire Weinstein debacle. Obviously, Weinstein going to court and things like that. And the company just imploded. Every exec that had been preying on me during the development of the film disappeared, and even the main executive who kind of shepherded the project along was off the case. Suddenly, the company was in freefall. So that's kind of detailing that. But he had an idea for a sequel, right? And the sequel idea, the idea I rolled around in my head, and this isn't fully fleshed out, but I'd come up with an idea of a movie that was almost like the beginning of Pet Sematary. It's a family moving across state and moving to a town called Judgment. It's like a town in the south. It's a doctor and his family moving to this town, and you start to realise that the husband and wife have had some marital problems, and it's all about maybe now, with this new change, it'll be better for us. Things will be different for us in this new town. They've got a teenage daughter, and she starts hanging around with some people in town. You realise that this town is run by a sheriff and a judge, and it's kind of like a throwback to Nothing But Trouble, that movie with Dan Aykroyd. The crazy kind of judge character, I'd got this idea for this crazy judge character who wear glasses, but one of the glasses is painted black over one eye, and it's all very kind of religious and overbearing, like Footloose. Nobody can do anything. There's no celebration in this town. Sounds fine. It'd be interesting to see whether he does actually tie this. I've not read this yet. It'd be interesting to see whether he ties this together with Judgment. You are getting my actual first live reaction at this. Then the Splinter story would be the character of whoever Pinhead is once he's banished. This guy who's coming out of a prison, maybe, a la the beginning of the Blues Brothers. He's homeless, he's got nowhere to go, maybe he's a drug addict, and it's Paul T. Taylor. His hair's grown back a little bit, he's on a journey, trying to find his way back to wherever. Okay, so they do genuinely tie it back in, cool. And then there's a subplot where you're seeing the Auditor meet with his faction in Hell. There's a new person introduced who is the new leader of the Cenobite faction, the Order of the Gash. A new Hell Priest, the role formerly occupied by Pinhead. There are some inklings that it isn't working. You get to see more of the Stygian Inquisition, which is what he set up in Judgment, which was the kind of process of being judged, I guess. That's what he called them. And more of what they do, and you start to discover that more and more of these houses have been set up over the world, and that it's going on in different places, and there are more auditors, and they all look the same, but they're all in different places in the world. Not sure I would like that, in terms of them all looking the same. If they all look the same, but they're not the same person, I'd be more on board. You know, I like the idea of the Hell's Order, Cenobite Order, all of these are different, but I like the idea that they potentially wear certain clothes to mark them as certain things, but I wouldn't want them to be the same. If they're played by the same character or the same actor, I think that's a bit lame. It's a bit lazy, actually. Personally, I don't know. I've not spoken to Gary, so I may have just offended him, but such is life, I guess. This is... He probably think my movie's shit, but, you know, who knows? Then you go back to the town of Judgment, and it all boils down to, in the end, the truth of the matter is that the town Judgment is one giant Stygian Inquisition. Basically, it's one giant judgment house. It's not a town, it's a catchment, it's a spider's web. The Doctor's wife has made a deal with the Auditor to bring her husband and sell him out, because he's a habitual cheater. He's unfaithful to her all the time, and he's done it with her sister and everything else. There's a family split. That's quite nice. That's a callback to the original Hellraiser, very family-oriented. I like that. That's really cool. And that's why they've moved to this town. She's the one who's engineered it. You don't realise it, but she's brought him to this Judgment town, and in a reveal at the end, you find out that the judge is in fact the Auditor. It's a reveal where he transforms into the Auditor, and you find out that it's not just the house anymore, it's the whole town that is the catchment there, and people bringing people into his town. People are just disappearing into this town and being processed. It's not just rooms in a house anymore. Within each house in this town is a different faction of the Stygian Inquisition. So it's rooms of juries and rooms of surgeons, and the whole town is processing people. Quite like that. Don't hate it. Where did the Order of the Gash come in? Well, he says here. The leader of the Order of the Gash basically is having problems with the Auditor, saying that the town isn't running right. In the third act, you'd bring in the fact that the Auditor has been leaving a breadcrumb trail, a trail of clues to bring Paul T. Taylor's Pinhead back. To have him reborn as Pinhead and have a showdown with the new Hell Priest, kill the Hell Priest, take his throne, and then basically say, let's get to work with the Auditor and this whole town. I don't hate it. There's a lot going on, but I don't hate it. It's very grandiose, isn't it? But I would say, how does Paul T. Taylor become a Cenobite again? Does he go through the Cenobite processing? Because he seemed very much a human at that point. You know, does the Auditor bring him in, put him in a creation chamber? Who knows? But I like it. I don't hate it. It's not a bad idea at all. It also expands the world outwards. And interestingly enough, there's even shades of Panos Cosmatos's script in here, where the entire mansion that he had written in this script was going to be basically a lament configuration. I'll leave a link to the video I did on it above. I'm quite harsh in that video because he sent lawyers after me when I just discussed his script before, so I was pretty annoyed, but it's linked above. I don't like the idea of an entire house being a lament configuration. It's a bit blasé, a bit cliche. A whole town, but just being an area in which they operate, as they would naturally expand outwards, I don't hate that idea. I think that's a bit smarter than a house being a lament configuration. Now, Gary continues and says, that was really the kind of basic idea of the story, this kind of children of that corn, footloose kind of town with this maniacal judge who turns out to be the auditor. And then the backstory, of course, is the power struggle to usurp this old hell priest and bring back Pinhead and have him find his way. It was really a journey story, and I keep saying Paul T. Taylor because it's just easier to say that than Pinhead. But the Pinhead character would find his way back. And the reason I did the ending of Judgment the way I did, a lot of people found that ending polarizing. It was done very cheaply and very quickly. At least he admits it, I guess. In the old days of Dimension, what would have happened? We would have made Hellraiser Judgment, and they would have watched it, and Bob would have gone, this is pretty good, here's another 100 grand, go back, shoot a couple of days extra, and polish it up a bit. And I would have done a longer sequence of Pinhead being banished. I would have had his robes being stripped away, his pins being pulled out of his head, he'd be screaming, blood running down his face. Then I would have probably cut to a nighttime shot of it raining with a cop car driving down the street, the cop kind of looking out his window through the rain, maybe turn the light over, and you see a guy laying on the ground with the sheet over him naked. He'd go over to help him and pull off the sheet and roll him over, and it'd be Paul T. Taylor's face, lacerated in the grid, screaming, help me, help me. And I would have ended it there. I don't really think either is better than the other, to be fair. With that, I think that's fine, I guess. And he continues and says, I'd have done a lot more elaborate version of that ending. The reason I did that ending was quite simply, you're trying to come up with an ending to the story. So what did I do? I was so tired of seeing people holding up a box and saying, go to hell. Fair enough. Pinhead dies. He goes, in a flurry of poorly executed visual effects. And I always thought, if you're going to make someone suffer, then the best way is to take all of their power from them. And to me, it made perfect sense that he'd go back to what basically be thrust back to Earth, where he was a nobody. So really the idea for a sequel would be that he'd find his way back, that the Auditor would want him to come back, and there's no way that the Auditor wanted to take over. I think he likes Pinhead, and he wants to bring him back to the fold. So he would have left cues to Taylor's Pinhead to find his way back. Don't hate it. Don't hate it. Like I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think? Because, I mean, he is right. Gary is right. The movie did polarize people. They either loved it or they hated it, and the ending and so on and so forth. I didn't hate it. I don't mind. I quite like the Auditor character as well, played by Gary. I wouldn't want loads of Auditors to look the bloody same. I think that's boring. And I quite liked Paul Taylor. It wasn't a bad Pinhead either. It wasn't bad at all. You know, it is what it is. It's a indie film. It's a direct-to-video Hellraiser. But bearing in mind, we've had, I guess you could probably say 4 good ones, 2 really good ones, and then 2 middling. It's still the best of the direct-to-DVD bunch, for sure. Because god damn, are they fucking terrible. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this down below in the comment section. Gary, my dude, I'm going to send you an email. I'll speak to you soon. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like and a share. As always, guys, I have a Mr. H. Take care.